Joe, we are live.
What's up, everybody? Early morning edition, November 25th edition of a post UFC Shanghai show went down early morning. If I'm not mistaken, that main card may have started around 4:30 a.m. Or sorry, the card itself started around 4:30 a.m. Eastern Time. AM was the start of the main card, which went by very quick, in my opinion. I was hosting a boxing event last night, or emceeing a boxing event. Came home, as I told my co-host here, Sean Ross Sapp, that I forgot to set my alarm, and thankfully, naturally, I woke up at 7:02 a.m. Bang, turned the TV on, and was good to go. And I was definitely entertained with the four fights that I was able to catch on this card here. Sean, what did you think of the card altogether?
I got to watch most of it, the important stuff. By the way, return of headband SRS. I thought it was a good show. It was a fun show. There were things like Lee, who really helped build UFC in China. He is their guy there, getting a big win over Zakatow. You had Kelvin Gastelum with a sick knockout of Michael Bisping, which we don't see that happen very often. Michael Bisping in great spirits afterwards. We'll talk about his condition as we lead into that. Chase Sherman got knocked out. That was a little surprising. There was a lot of excitement on this show. There was the Caceres Guan fight that I was kind of looking forward to. Shayman Marias got dominated by Zabit. And then you had Song Keenan knocking out Bobby Nash in like 15 seconds, maybe sending Bobby Nash packing. There was a lot of good stuff on this show. And sometimes when the fighters aren't, I mean, this wasn't like absent of MMA talent like some shows in China may have been, but it just had that one big fight that we could hedge our bets on and that we could really care about, because a lot of these fights won't really pay dividends for the UFC for quite a while, but some of their Chinese stars got wins, and I think it was designed to do so.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to start holding events in various countries around the world, it's the local talent that you're A, hoping to build, B, hoping to sell tickets, obviously, if they've got a name for themselves, already competing on the local circuit, and they've got a fan following, not just family and friends, but a fan following. You can fill up the venue itself. And of course, you've got to put a main event that's worthy in terms of at least international appeal. Kelvin Gastelum, Anderson Silva had that appeal. Anderson Silva, as we know, falls out with the USADA flag, and Michael Bisping steps in, albeit on short notice. And I did see some tweets on my social media at Showdown Joe after the fight where people said, well, there was actually some, Sean, before the fight who basically stated, listen, man, this guy should be on medical suspension, should he not be? He did have, it wasn't much of a war with George St. Pierre, but it still was a fight. At the very least, he should have been under medical suspension. And then after the fight was over, getting knocked out the way he did, people again questioned his health, and should the UFC or the commission or anyone sanctioning this event, should they have allowed Michael Bisping to compete? Again, don't take away the power of Kelvin Gastelum, who pulled off an incredible technique, the way he slipped, landed that right cross, then the left to knock out Michael Bisping, who's obviously getting older in his mixed martial arts career. So the event itself, I think, went off without a hitch. I like the main event. It says a lot about Kelvin Gastelum. I think it says a lot about Michael Bisping as well.
Yeah, it does. And like, man, there's a lot to go into this Michael Bisping thing. You heard his voice all throughout the lead up to this fight and afterwards. He's raspy. I wonder if he's sick, if he's under the weather. Kelvin Gastelum's been through a full fight camp, and so had Bisping in 3 weeks prior to this. But it's like, what was he doing before preparing for this fight? He was probably contemplating his career, wondering what he was going to do, if he was going to fight again, where he could fight again. And he just decided to squeeze us in. But if you can do that for Michael Bisping, like I'm sitting here wondering, where's the harm? I mean, obviously to his physical health and it maybe his long-term future. But as far as financially, if he knows he's going to retire in March, hell, squeeze me in December too if you can, but he's not going to be able to do that now. Not after he's been knocked out cold. Like that won't happen. But I didn't think he looked too terrible until or he didn't look bad at all until the knockout happened.
He did not look bad at all. He looked actually pretty good, and just. I don't know, Sean. I keep thinking as these fighters get older, these are the punches. I mean, we've seen Michael Bisping get knocked out of, obviously, the infamous Dan Henderson in UFC 100 knockout, but he's taken shots since then and stood there and took them. And this was one shot that was just lights out, man. That's what I tweeted, lights out.
Yeah. And we don't see Michael Bisping get put out like that very often. It's been like what since maybe who knocked him out last?
I was about to say Rockhold. Nope, that was the other way around. Anderson dropped him pretty hard, but never knocked him out.
Never knocked him out. This was
No.
a clean knockout. We saw like maybe Vitor Belfort knocked him pretty silly, but come on now, we know what was up with Vitor Belfort at that time. He was just juiced to the gills, just full of that TRT. Like when he ate his breakfast in the morning with Fruit Loops, he would just empty a syringe of testosterone into the bowl. Like, there we go. There we go.
You know what? It's almost facetious and cynical the way we talk about Vitor Belfort at times in his TRT era and steroids. But man, you look at some of the pictures of when he made his UFC debut, throughout his career, getting off it, TRT, USADA, and you just can't help but say, you know, and I've said it before, I'm the worst in terms of the eye test when it comes to looking at a fighter, male or female's physique to say, yeah, they're on something. But yeah, that was just Vitor Belfort. Whew.
So where do you think Gastelum goes from here? He teased, oh, maybe Robert Whittaker in February. You ain't getting that fight, buddy. You just lost to Chris Weidman. But he is really 3-1 in this division, and he's always talked about going back to 170. I'm sorry, that ain't happening either. Not if you're showing up at 186 on fight night and you've got to strip down with your balls hanging out to make weight. Sorry, you're not going to go make 170 again. That ain't happening. And you definitely ain't going to make the championship weight if that ever occurs. What do you think's in his future?
Did you have a chance to catch the full event after the fights went down with the conversation with John Anik and Dan Hardy?
I didn't.
Okay, so I mean, Dan Hardy was positioning. He would love to see. Well, they're both saying at this point here, it's got to be someone in the top 5. They won't be surprised if on Tuesday or Wednesday, when the rankings come out, that he's in the top 5. I guess it's obvious he wants that fight with Whittaker because, quote unquote, he said Whittaker is looking for an opponent. Understandably so. We don't know what's happening with George St. Pierre, but I don't think he's getting that shot, like you said. It's just not going to happen. That rematch with Weidman would be nice, in my opinion. I know
Romero's there.
What's that?
Romero's there.
Yeah, I mean that'd be an interesting fight if he can, nullify what Romero brings to the cage and use that power to see if he can knock out Romero. I like that fight. I mean, the Jacare fight's there. There's a lot of stuff there for Kelvin Gastelum, and there's some options for Michael Bisping as well. I mean, Hardy and Anik. I mean, Hardy was saying he would love to see Michael's final fight in England versus Lyoto Machida. I remember what John Anik said. John Anik said he'd like to see Bisping versus somebody else, but there's options for both guys. One obviously would be at the final fight of his career. One trying to move his way up the rankings. I mean, what do you think?
I think they'll probably do something like run a show in Omaha and have it headlined by Gastelum and Brunson or something like that. Like, instead of building a name or having somebody knock off a fairly young contender, that's just the feeling I get. Gastelum kind of gets to go back to his Legends tour, even though that he lost out on Bisping, he lost out on Silva, he got to fight Bisping, and he had beaten Vitor Belfort, he beat Johnny Hendricks. Like he had been through there and done that. So if I were him, I would like to face a Luke Rockhold to kind of keep that former champions type of deal going. Like that's the one I would angle for. Romero, Rockhold, Jacare all don't have fights right now. That's pretty, as far as I remember, but man, that's pretty solid. That's a solid amount of, and you know that a couple of those guys are going to get booked up against each other because that's just the way the UFC does it at the tops of that division. So I'm excited to see what emerges out of this fight, because that was a hell of a performance by Gastelum. I wondered if closing the distance would be an issue. It was not an issue at all. He got in there. He slugged Michael Bisping, knocked him cold. Like, it's just really impressive to me when something like that happens. And I know a lot of people will think, oh, wow, the decline of Michael Bisping came really quickly. Like, man, he took this fight on such short notice and after such a war with George St. Pierre at that. And it was his time. And it does, what it does to me is it does put his reign into question a little bit. That title reign that he had when you get strangled by a guy who hadn't fought in 4 years, as good as he may be, and then you get knocked out by the number 9 guy with relative ease. I'll say that, relative ease. Does that make you wonder? Does that reinforce that thing where it's like, well, was he really the champion?
Yeah, you know what? It's always going to be around Bisping's career. I mean, you and I talked about it from day one. The shocking revelation that he was the middleweight champion, defeating Luke Rockhold, and rightfully so, because the guy did what he had to do. He took that fight on short notice and became the world champion. And then the fact is, he only defended it once or twice. Once to Dan Henderson because it was the hey UFC, I just did you a solid. Why don't you do me a solid and give me let me avenge that Dan Henderson fight? He was able to do it. He did it. Fantastic. But then there was that long lull, and not really his fault per se, although he was injured. There was the whole situation with George St. Pierre. They were supposed to fight last December. It didn't happen. They did the press conference, I think it was March or May. That fight didn't happen at the right time, and then they just did it in November. So there's always that little bit of an asterisk next to Michael Bisping's reign as the middleweight champion. I understand it. I get it. I think rightfully so. He was the champion. He deserves to be called the champion, although his era was kind of strange. But like you said, gets knocked out by the number 9 guy. The other person I was mentioning that John Anik mentioned, excuse me. So you had Dan Hardy mention Lyoto Machida would be a fantastic fight. That's the one he's trying to campaign for. And John Anik said, well, listen, Michael Bisping told me that he would like to have his revenge fight, final fight versus Vitor Belfort in England. So those are 2 options for Bisping. We get to that in a second. But in terms of his reign, you're bang on. It's not you, Sean. It's not me. It's the overall sentiment in the mixed martial arts world from fans, pundits, media, people in general, that Bisping's reign as middleweight champion is just kind of this weird, almost blip in the linear title and just how it has unfolded over the years.
And also, let's talk about how in maybe 5 months, 6 months, this middleweight division, you look up and down the rankings, it's going to be gutted, and a lot of names are going to be out of there. Who knows what GSP wants to do? He says he's going to take a little vacation, decide what he wants to do. Maybe he just decides to hang him up. Michael Bisping has straight up said, after March, I'm hanging him up. Number 8, Anderson Silva, he's probably going to be pulled from the rankings pretty soon because of a USADA violation. You have Vitor Belfort, number 12. He's at the very least planning on leaving the UFC. Lyoto Machida shouldn't be in those rankings and will likely retire in 2018 at some point. That's 4 or 5 big names that may or may not just be there, or that have been there for a long time. Not necessarily in that division, but at light heavyweight and welterweight and things like that. So you're going to have new names. Paulo Costa's already ranked, but you're going to have the Thiago Santos and Elias and Ramazan Emeev and Brad Tavares kind of emerge there. Tim Boetsch will always hang around. Like you think about Tim Boetsch and you're like, yeah, he's lost 3 in a row. Oh no, he's won 3 of his last 4. So he's going to be around for at least 2 or 3 more years because that man ain't ever retiring. They're going to have to wheel him out like before he retires. Shoeface is one that I'm watching out for. Antonio Carlos Jr. I can't believe he's not ranked yet. I love that guy. He is one.
If he's not ranked by that's a joke that he's not ranked. It's ridiculous.
He should be ranked. I love watching him fight. He's a young dude, but I think that those are some of the names we're going to see kind of slide in there and emerge. By the way, quick plug. So during Thanksgiving week and Thanksgiving weekend, a lot of websites kind of just a lull on content and don't do anything. Not us. We had the MMA industry podcast. I listened to it the other day. Yourself, James Lynch. What was that experience like for you?
Well, that was super fun. Yeah, that was interesting. A good hour. He's just asking me fantastic questions in terms of how I got started in MMA. Obviously, couldn't get into everything. But it was a great conversation. Got some pretty good feedback off of those that tuned in. You can obviously check it out on the Fightful website and Fightful Pods, but it was fun. I liked it. I enjoyed it. It's an honor and a pleasure. I mean, I've known James for quite some time, so it was good.
I always put over that podcast. Anybody who is curious about the behind the scenes of MMA, check that out. He's talked to managers. He's talked to people covering big events that week. He's talked to Joe. He's talked to me. There are a lot of different angles. It's not like just one story. How I get in. What's it like when you are in? What's it like when you do this for a full-time living? The first week that I did it, we talked a lot about pro wrestling as well. That wasn't the only show we did. I released a members-only show, Fightful Books It, on how I would make changes to the Royal Rumble. And tomorrow we are releasing a From the Archives. I found a bunch of unlisted videos from filmings of Holy Smokes of Sean Pearson. Just talking trash. So all throughout the year, I've got one of Frank Trigg as well that we will put up whenever there's a lull in content. And hopefully sometime this weekend, Joe, I will be breaking down the best Black Friday fights.
I'm waiting for that.
Can't wait. Got to get them together. Got to get the right ones. I got to scout them.
That's true. Yeah. Have you found any new ones lately?
Well, I saw one like where for some reason this store set up all their TVs next to an escalator. Like, man.
What?
Oh, yeah. Or they set up all their TVs next to an escalator and people were just grabbing them and being slid down. It was nuts. It was nuts.
Do you want me to send you some more? I mean, I guess everyone in the live chat can answer this as well because you're all probably going to say yes, you crazy savages. But
hit me up.
Do you guys want me to send Sean Ross Sapp anything that I come across when I see some sort of fight on social media and stuff like that, and have Sean break it down and just as silly as they can? There was one that I saw. I told you already about, Sean, where it was 3 guys on one, 30 punches thrown. I was like, this is a Sean Ross Sapp breakdown right now.
Oh, yeah. People love the NFL one. Like, I had friends that don't watch my Fightful stuff. They tuned in and they watched that. So I'm going to give a little something to the world. But we look to expand, as always. By the way, guys, a programming note before we get into these last few fights for a few minutes. I had put up a poll that I had set to expire Tuesday, but you all have already kind of spoken. Instead of a show on Friday and Saturday, we're going to do one wrap-up after UFC 218 because, right now the poll is at 85% for one show, and we do listen to our viewers. But James Lynch will be on the scene at UFC 218. He's going to have content, interviews, all kinds of stuff all week long in Detroit. Is it weird to you that the UFC is running 2 shows back-to-back nights, but in different cities?
Yeah. Well, they've done it before. They've done it on different parts of the continent or different parts of the globe. They've also, if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I was thinking about this, because as I was searching for the Ultimate Fighter finale on my personal calendar, because I subscribe to the UFC iCalendar, I'm looking, and just I didn't see it anywhere. Then I saw the ad in today's broadcast that it's actually Friday. And then the pay-per-view was on Saturday. I'm like, oh, that's why I didn't see it. I didn't realize it was on the Friday. And then I thought to myself, was there a time when there were 3 shows back to back to back?
Our first week last year.
Okay, so that was with Fightful. I'm trying to think, because when I was in Vegas one time, I remember doing, I think it may have been a WEC, an Ultimate Fighter finale, and a pay-per-view. I don't remember. But I remember covering, it was just like we were exhausted when it was all said and done. So.
Oh, last year, and this was just on us. They had that break after June, and then we launched Fightful, and that week there was Dos Anjos versus Alvarez, where Alvarez won the championship, and you had Derek Lewis and Roy Nelson in that fight. But then the next night was Joanna defeating Claudia Gadelha, and that was the big fight there. And you had Will Brooks. I think that was maybe his debut. I can't remember. And then you had UFC 200 back-to-back nights. And then they came back, I think it was maybe 5 or 6 days later. Like it was like, or no, it was 4 days later. Because then the following Wednesday, Joe, they did that McDonald Lineker, remember? Because they did that like like, oh, we're going to do a Wednesday show. Okay, thanks, man. We appreciate it. Speaking of appreciating, and I'm pretty sure Zach Atau did not appreciate what happened to him. He's facing free agency now, and he doesn't have the benefit of a Bellator to bounce off of. He's not that big of a name, and he got beat up pretty bad, Joe.
Yeah, I mentioned it in my fun bets that Jing Lang's no joke. This guy brings it, and as we saw, he brought it. I didn't think it was going to be that quick. I thought it would at least go into the second round, but Jing Lang is that I hate to say star, but perhaps in China, he's really building it up very, very well. I mean, you could hear the crowd in that co-main event. I mean, it was crazy to see him jump the cage and run to his girl and his daughter. His daughter was like, "What the hell is Daddy doing over here?"
Yeah, that was a cool moment, though.
Yeah, cute little girl. Oh my gosh, she was so adorable. And then he rushed back into the cage because the UFC does not like when fighters do that. I know emotions get the best of them, but um, Zakatow. I mean, for a moment there, I thought from the camera angle during the live shot, was it stopped too early? And in the replay, you could see that Zach was like, no, 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 thank you for stopping it. I got nothing. This guy's coming at me hard and powerful. And so, yeah, Li Jinglang did a great job. And I wouldn't say they were talking about it afterwards, like I mentioned after the event was done. John and Dan were about, what does this mean for a guy at 170 pounds in a division that is absolutely stacked? And I think Anik had the best answer. It's time for this guy to fight top 10, top 15 talent, see where he really stands with the killers in this division.
I completely agree. It is time. It's the spot for him to do it, and he's got a good record. He's got some credibility behind him. He's won 5 of his last 6. He's not like a lot of the guys that they've thrown in there inexperienced. He's ready to go. He's got 3 really good finishes over the past, like since last July, since we launched last year. That International Fight Week knockout, he had that one against Bobby Nash, ironically, who got knocked out in 15 seconds tonight. In January on Fox, and then he got the one tonight. And he got 2 bonuses back to back. Even the fight that wasn't a finish, the one against Camacho. By the way, Camacho is a guy I just look forward to watching fight now because he always puts on great fights. But so you go from 2 knockouts to a fight of the night to a performance of the night. That's a nice little track record to have there, but put him up against a top 15 guy and have it as a co-main event or a main event in China. Let it roll.
He could definitely headline it. I mean, that was a part of the conversation they were mentioning, and you and I talked about it off the top. This guy can headline a show. The next time the UFC does have an event in mainland China or in the region, I would focus on mainland China if it's going to be Jinglang, but he can definitely headline the show, but it's got to be against a name that the international audience knows if they want to get any sort of viewership from an international audience. I'm trying my best to pay very close attention to how ONE FC does their things out there in Asia, because they're obviously the dominant promotion out there, but the UFC is just, they've opened the door, put their foot down, we're here. So we'll see what we're here really means when potentially they're only going to have maybe 1-2 events there a year, Sean, whereas ONE FC has all their events there.
Yeah. That's something that you got to look out for UFC in China, because it's tough to break into China. Shane McMahon tried to do it with like video on demand, and he failed. And it couldn't work. And if it's something that maybe that if they're not trusting or they're just not used to, it might not work. But there was a lot of good on this show. There was a lot of good finishes on this show, which I didn't necessarily expect. I don't know what I expected from this show. I guess I should go into that not like maybe not outwardly expressing that, oh, this is going to be a bad show. It wasn't a newsworthy show per se. Like you didn't have a lot of guys on there that you could look at and say, oh, that's a future champion, that's a future contender, or anything like that. But Shayman Moraes got dominated by Zabit, and he is smothering people. Song Keenan defeated Bobby Nash, TKO, 15 seconds, right after a low blow, pop right in the face. You had Shamil Abdurakhimov defeat Chase Sherman, a guy that looked like he was on the come up in Chase Sherman, at least as it pertains to social media, knocked him out with the quickness as well. Was there anything else on this show that like really stood out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a judging in the Wang Guan Alex Caceres fight.
Yeah, that too. That was weird. I didn't think Caceres won that one.
Well, Wang Guan gets a split decision. 2 judges had it 29-28 for Wang Guan. 1 judge had it 29-28 for Alex Caceres.
I saw nobody give it to Caceres. Nobody but that judge.
How does all 3 judges gave a round to Alex Caceres?
Yeah.
What round? This fight, and I'm like, what round did Alex Caceres win?
Man,
because
I love
dropped.
I love watching Alex Caceres fight, dude. I do, but he did not win. That he did not. Man, that's mind-boggling.
Yeah. So I mean, he didn't win 1 round at all, but all 3 judges eventually gave him 1 round, and 1 judge gave him 2 rounds. I don't know what fight you're watching, because that first round was a 10-8 round, hands down for Wang Guan. No ifs, ands, or buts, because that fight could have been stopped. Boom, 10-8 round. The next two rounds, you can make the argument that they were 10-9, but they were all Wang Guan. So I don't know. I tweeted it out. If anyone has a copy of the scorecards, any of the media out there have a copy of the scorecards that were emailed out, because the UFC generally emails them out to the media that are in attendance or that are credentialed for an event. And I said, if anyone has it, please tag me. Please let me take a look, because I want to discuss it on this podcast. But that was just absolutely crazy. But I will just on a separate topic. I absolutely love Dan Hardy, man. That guy there in that fight there had me not literally, figuratively peeing my pants, because every time they mentioned Wang Guan, he says, we're not trying to talk patois here, obviously, which is Jamaican. And then the amount of cup shots that he received, and he kept saying how the cup, he basically got a bang for his buck for his cup. I'm like, that just, you know what, morning coffee, Dan Hardy, great, just absolutely loved it.
Yeah, I don't necessarily like these early morning cards, but I do love afternoon shows. It's nice to have my evening a little open. I mean, we've got Carlos doing live boxing coverage tonight. We've got James Lynch heading over to Detroit to cover that show this week. Like, we've got a ton of stuff on Fightful right now. We have exclusives with Misha Serkinov. We have MMA pros picks that are up right now, where they pick Alistair Overeem versus Francis Ngannou. Tomorrow, you'll see probably tomorrow or Monday, you'll see a bunch of fighters picking the main event fight between Max Holloway and Jose Aldo. We just have a ton of interviews over at Fightful.com and FightfulMMA.com. Exclusives all over the place. Usually I even like to limit them a little bit, and I can't. I had to just unleash like 5 or 6 over a day or two, because we had so many. We didn't have enough time, Joe. We didn't have enough time.
That's what happens when a site starts growing, and we're growing, and we're growing. Exclusives are coming in left, right, and center. So,
man, as I look up there right now, it's like Misha Serkinov, Kenny Dykstra, Hangman Page at the Bullet Club, podcast, live coverage. There were sites that didn't do live coverage this morning. David Tees did it. But guys, make sure you all follow us at Fightful Online. Head over to Fightful.com. Use those forums. We're going to be doing contests all the time. There's a thread up there right now asking if Michael Bisping should retire. Go over there and chime in. It's absolutely free, and you get access to a lot of cool stuff that you don't get access to if you're not registered. You can follow Joe at Showdown Joe, myself at Sean Ross Sapp. Joe, you got anything else?
That's about it. I may give a call to Frank Trigg. I want him to join me on Tuesday to talk about the judging and what happened here. I just got to find out what city he's in, because he could be in LA. He could be in Shanghai.
That's what I was going to say.
I had no idea I had that many friends in China. They were all messaging me saying, hey, you coming to cover the China show? I'm like, what? If there was a show in Toronto, maybe, but I'm not coming out to Shanghai. I have friends that live and teach English in China. I had no idea. I'm like, cool. I haven't talked to you in a while. So we'll try to get a hold of Trigg, because Sean Ross Sapp kind of triggered something in me about trash talking that Pearson does. Frank Trigg's been holding back a lot of his trash talk that he's notorious for doing early in his mixed martial arts career. I'm going to see if I can push some buttons with Frank on Tuesday. So,
well, guys, thank you all so much. I know this is an abbreviated show. We're back next Saturday. You all have spoken. Instead of a show Friday and Saturday, we're doing one Saturday, maybe a little longer than usual, but we're going to pack in all that. Tough 26 finale Friday, guys. Join our live discussion. A new champion will be crowned. Saturday night, you got a featherweight championship fight and a big heavyweight fight. I'm talking big. This UFC 218 show is going to be really, really good. Also that night, I'm going to try to squeeze in and check out that Julia Budd versus Blinkow fight. That rematch is happening that night as well. So maybe we'll talk about that as well. But you got a lot to look forward to next weekend, guys. The main event of the Tough 26 finale, which I just think it would be a great story to see Roxanne Modafferi end up there. But Saturday, Alvarez Gaethje, Torres versus Watterson, Cejudo versus Pettis, Ngannou Overeem, Holloway Aldo, and that doesn't even, like, a bunch of other fights on the prelims, like people that we've interviewed, like Courtney Casey, Amanda Cooper, Drakkar Klose, all over the show. So make sure you all tune in. Until next time, guys, we're out.